What's up everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories about Karens, insane people, and all that kind of stuff. As usual, we'll be checking out some more Reddit posts today, so feel free to share your thoughts about today's stories down in the comments and we're getting right into it. How I stopped an HOA from trying to deforest my parents' property. My parents live out in the sticks, about an hour from the nearest major city. They were hippies back in the day and had taken to the off-the-grid lifestyle pretty well. They bought a bunch of land as an investment, but after half a decade it barely changed in appraisal, so they decided to live on the property instead. It ended up being where I grew up. After I moved out and started my own life elsewhere, a housing development moved in nearby selling a similar lifestyle. They bought hundreds of acres and split everything up, building homes and selling them off to city folk looking for an escape. These lots completely surrounded my parents' larger property. Of course, they established an HOA and tried to get my parents to sign in and join a number of times. They put their little clubhouse right next to them and had their fancy entrance run right alongside their property. Fast forward 5-ish years, my parents still have not joined. The neighborhood ended up being pretty successful and the HOA is pretty loaded, so they added a church with a giant cross out front, a gym, a pool area, an outside theater thing, and a little park, but are now running out of room on their lot of land. The HOA board members were dicks to my parents this whole time. I think they were trying to get them to either join or leave to buy the land, whichever came first. They called their property an undeveloped eyesore and tried everything they could to make their lives hell for no apparent reason. My parents kept to themselves and never bothered any neighbors. Latest update, my parents gave in. They signed the bylaws and joined the HOA. I don't know why, they don't seem to know why. But they signed the papers and within the week had 4 letters threatening fines and fees if the parts of the property closest to their clubhouse weren't cleaned up, i.e. deforested. Being nature lovers, my parents didn't want their entire property to be grass and nothing else. They liked the woods, and my mom even cried about not being able to see the usual squirrels and birds from her porch if this happened. They felt they'd move before complying. However, they signed the agreement and that was that. When I visited, I read through everything and found some loopholes. One of them was a landscaping clause that had appeared in the last 5 years, long after every other property had been cleared and cleaned of nature, requiring that each plant on the property be identified and pre-approved for removal before it can be removed, to preserve endangered species apparently. So I hired a botanist from the local college, $1,000 to come and identify the plants on the property and give a rough count, much better than the $6,000 being threatened in fines. Only $2,000 was actually threatened, but reading through everything they technically could find more and ended up sending more fines later. 88 unique species identified, and by rough estimates over 1,000 plants that fell into their category of requiring pre-approval. The next day I set about sending them hundreds and hundreds of emails for each plant to be removed, one by one, everything from tiny saplings to 50-foot birch trees, most with pictures and the referenced botanist's report for verification. I got 2 emails back for approvals of small bushes before they stopped. I kept sending them emails. At least 700 were sent before one of the board members called my parents to talk about it. Instead of backing down, they offered to expedite it and pre-approve everything to be removed. Not what we wanted, but I called their bluff and agreed. I explained this was perfect as I could now fill the property with giant swastikas even sooner than expected. What? Yes, I said. I would like to put swastikas on my property, and getting rid of the forest will make them more visible from the road, clubhouse, pool, and park, all of which is alongside our property. I could even use the wood from the chopped trees to make a giant swastika the same size as their giant cross, 10+ feet. You can't do that. That's discriminatory. My parents are Jainists, I explained, and the swastika is a holy symbol for Jainism and has been long before Hitler. Section 2 of SB 158A allows any religious symbol to be placed on one's property, and the HOA is not legally allowed to do anything about it. Don't worry, I said. The swastikas will have little dots in them so people know it's not for Nazis. Even if it were though, First Amendment and all. Let me call you back. They call back and say the HOA board dictator is going to come over and talk about it. We went back and forth for like an hour about what exactly defines a reasonable change on the property, but eventually he backed down. And just to elaborate a bit on the whole swastika thing, swastika symbols have historically been used in Jainism, Buddhism, and Hinduism, and for thousands of years before Nazis even existed. It generally represents good luck and prosperity for religions that use it. So it is true, OP isn't just messing around. They agreed my parents' property could be grandfathered in and would stop sending letters of intent to fine about the forested areas. My parents still get annoyed with minor problems all the time, mostly related to trash days in their driveway, but it's mostly subsided. Moral of the story: if privileged power-tripping Karens are fining your parents for their lifestyle, threaten giant swastikas. Update. After sharing the specific details about how and why my mother signed themselves into the HOA surrounding their property, many helpful Redditors pointed out that the circumstances qualified for signing under duress. Her sister, my aunt, had been in a rather nasty fight with her new husband that morning, and it ended in a fire in their house. Long story, won't get into it. But needless to say, my mother was stressed as hell when they came by to try yet again to get them to sign away their rights. I contacted a lawyer friend of mine who has handled a handful of HOAs in the past. She believes this qualifies as signing under duress as well, and within the week came down to speak to their board dictator. His stance is that we had come to an agreement, having my parents' property grandfathered in and therefore exempt from lawn maintenance standards and fines, and that this verbal agreement after the signing of the documents, while not under duress, meant we didn't have a leg to stand on. Obviously that's some bullcrap and she wasn't having it. She told him she'd be filing paperwork that evening and he should plan to see her and my family in court. He was not happy about this. We had her over for dinner and talked quite a bit about her options. She loved my swastika idea and even encouraged it, which I was rather surprised by, so I started the next morning. I constructed a very crappy-looking swastika after 2 days of hammering wood together, propped it up against a nice tree, and hung 4 Christmas ornaments in between them to signify it as a religious swastika, and not a Nazi one, as I had originally threatened and as would be protected under Texan law. Unsurprisingly, I was approached by the lady that initially got my mother to sign the bylaws, utterly appalled at what I was doing. I explained my reasoning and stance, clarified them to be Jainist views, and went about erecting my roughly 8-foot-tall swastika in the front yard, perfectly visible from the road, the entrance to their clubhouse, out the windows of their church, and from their community pool. 3 hours later, the sheriff showed up to the property. I drove down to greet him. He only had questions, saying he couldn't actually do anything about it even if he wanted to, and we talked for a bit. He was nice and seemed to side with my family in this whole feud we had going on. Bits and pieces of events occurred over the next 2 weeks. Too much and of little significance to mention, but I'll run through a few. At least 8 Karens felt the need to walk onto our property to take pictures. I was there for and threatened 3 of them. I painted the swastika baby blue so it was more obvious. The HOA apparently had a meeting to discuss the swastika and what to do about my parents ruining the neighborhood. Big update just came a few days ago. My lawyer friend said she had been in a constant back and forth with the HOA, trying to convince them to simply trash the contract rather than take it to court, quote, because they're gonna f***ing lose. Much of our leverage is the signing under duress, and the fact that the HOA has provided no services to my parents in any form, as they do other residents, although this is per our verbal agreement of leaving us alone, and my parents do not use any HOA amenities. We even have a back road on our property to get out of the neighborhood, so they can't even argue we're using surface streets. Short of it is, they f***ing lost. The dictator caved yesterday after they got a rundown of lawyer fees, and supposedly even their own lawyer said he wasn't confident in them winning if it did go to local court, considering the current legal climate, whatever that means. We ended up coming to an agreement. 2 new papers were signed by my family and the HOA board. The first was them agreeing to nullify the original contract my mother had signed, due to understanding she had been under duress due to familial troubles. The second was us agreeing to take down the swastika and refrain from similar religious signage, originally worded visual protest, in the future, and them agreeing to not solicit our property as we have no intentions now nor ever of joining their HOA. If they solicit again, the swastika is going back up permanently per our agreement. I want to give a major thanks to some of those Redditors that suggested I do this in the first place, and a huge thanks to my unnamed lawyer friend for helping us out so much with this. I know you read the first one and are reading this, so thank you. Thank you for 1,000th time. I skipped many details, and she could probably write a book with how much she went through to get here. I'm very happy to say we're back to square one, but an even better square at that. Private driveway being used as public roadway. Purchased 30 acres of land and built a house several years back in Central Florida. Had a driveway installed that cuts across the center of my property, allowing me to exit on either of the two main roads. I now have traffic using my driveway as a shortcut between the two roads, up to and including 18-wheelers and other large vehicles, since using my driveway cuts off nearly half an hour of travel time between two cities. I installed pillars and gates on both ends of the driveway and marked it private property, but the gates were torn down and the pillars knocked over. I have contacted the county about it, and they sent out a guy from code compliance who looked around for a few minutes and left. I have now received a notice about not keeping the roadway to state standards, and that the county will be out to perform maintenance bringing the roadway up to standards, i.e. widening it and repaving, which I will be personally responsible for paying for. I've told them if they want it to be a public road, then fine, buy me out and I'll move elsewhere, but they refuse to do so. As of right now, I have removed half the driveway past my house and put up signs and markers stating dead-end road, and now the county is threatening to have me arrested for destruction of public property. Before anyone asks, no, there are no easements on this property anywhere near the area the drive goes through, and no easements in any form that travel in that direction on the property. Closest thing is a power company easement along the southern edge of the land. County has basically turned my private property into public land without using eminent domain and without any compensation. My driveway is right beside my house, a few feet off the carport. Up until a few years ago, it was a non-issue. Now it's nearly constant traffic day and night. The driveway was crushed gravel 1 car width when I put it in. Now it's about 3 cars wide and dirt from all the traffic. It's so bad that my house is circled with cars driving around to avoid cars coming the opposite way. I have no clue how, but it ended up on Google Maps. They have a street view of it and it's named. Not sure I should say what. When I first moved here and extended the driveway, I rarely closed the gates off because I saw no need to. Once I started getting crossing traffic, I'd close the gates up, and they would end up damaged by getting rammed open. I've had locks cut, the gates physically lifted off the pins and thrown aside, posts pulled out, block pillars pushed over after the posts were removed, mailbox driven over, plants in my yard driven over. Water line from my well was crushed by heavy vehicles driving over it. I ended up putting in an inner fence and ditch to protect what's close to my house. It's like I'm forced to live in a fort because of the cars and trucks going by. I got both UPS and Amazon using my driveway because it trims a lot of time off accessing their hubs in the center of the state. After I shut down the eastern half of the driveway, the trucks would drive around the berm I had, and eventually over once it got knocked down enough to clear it. Then they drive across the lot over to where the driveway restarts and down it to the other road. Update. Raised hell with the county commissioner for my district. Showed them video and threatened to lawyer up. He pulled in the director for the road and bridge department, then pulled in the director of zoning and planning. My driveway is no longer a road, and I am no longer being assessed for repairs, and I am legally allowed to do what is necessary to stop traffic from crossing my property. So both sides of the property have been ditched and bermed, and a steel pole gate across the side I plan on keeping open. Sheriff's Department has been out multiple times dealing with people trying to enter the property, but they are starting to get the hint that the road is closed. We are currently in negotiations for a portion of my property to be purchased and turned into a road, but not 10 feet from my house. There is a county commissioners meeting next Tuesday and it is on the docket to be brought up. My driveway is no longer on Google Maps as a road. Signage posted private property, no trespassing, dead-end road, etc. Several people are angry about it as they are used to the pass-through. But with the cameras I've installed, I've been able to get clear images of vehicles and license plates of the worst offenders, and they will be cited according to the Sheriff's Department. I have contacted Amazon and UPS about their trucks crossing my property. UPS has instructed their drivers to no longer use that route. Haven't heard a thing back from Amazon yet, but I have stopped 2 of their trucks so far, both of which were ticketed by the Sheriff's Department, and one needing a tow to get pulled off the berm it got stuck on. Thank you all of you for the suggestions. Hopefully soon this will all be over and I can get on with my life. Final update. Sold a 60-foot wide stretch of my property to the county. They will be installing a 2-lane road along it this spring. The county has repaired the damage to my land caused by the vehicles driving over it by grading and sodding around my house in the worst areas, and installing a paved drive across where my old gravel drive was. I now have a ditch across the edge of my property along both roadways with guardrails installed by the county, and rather large I-beam mounted motorized industrial gates on both ends of the driveway. County has promised in writing to install a ditch and guardrail along the border of the new road when it is installed. I still get people attempting to enter the gates and cross the property from time to time, but much less often now, the vast majority of them being commuter vehicles, no commercial trucks. I am no longer on Google Maps as a public roadway. Had a suggestion via PM to check Waze and OpenStreetMap. Apparently Google got their info from one of them and assumed it was correct. All in all, I am satisfied with the outcome. Anyway guys, that's going to be all for today. Thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Be sure to drop a like if you enjoyed and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. So take care, stay tuned for more, and I'll see you next time.